In this video, I'll be showing us step-by-step method to achieve this beautiful dress you are seeing right now. If it's something that interests you to learn, stick to the video and let's do this together. Welcome again to my YouTube channel. To all our subscribers, you're welcome. If it's your first time, you're welcome. So I have this fabric. I'll be using 2 yards of Ankara fabric, and I'll proceed by folding my fabric in two, just exactly the way you're seeing right now. And I'll be cutting the down part first, which is the trouser part, and I've folded my fabric, ensuring that the width of the fabric is enough for the quarter of my hip measurement. So I'll proceed by getting my full length, and the full length of the jumpsuit is 60. So from my shoulder to my half length is 15. So minusing 15 from the 60, I will use the remaining for the down part. So I have 45. So the trouser part now is 45. Then this is me trying to get the 45, and I will not just cut the 45 accurate like that. I'm going to be adding like about 2 inches additional to the down parts, which is what I'm doing right now. And this is me marking out with my chalk the 60 inches length and the extra allowance I'll be using to fold the trouser down. And this is what I have right now on my fabric. So I'll flip my cloth my fabric to the upper parts to get my waist, hip and other area measured. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to mark the starting points. You can see my tape rule is rightly placed on 15 inches above. So I'll be marking it from there, and that stands for my waist line. I didn't know my ruling was a bit bent, so I'm going to be correcting this Y before I sew it. So the next line I'm going to mark is my hip measurement, and the hip measurement from my half length down is 10 inches. So I'll be marking it down there, 10 inches. And I've ruled it again. So the next thing I'm going to be ruling on is my couch measurement, and the couch measurement is just 2 inches below the hip line. This varies. It can be 3 inches, it can be 2 inches, but for me I'm going to be using 2 inches. So the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to divide the measurements, my hip measurement, by 4, and my hip measurement is 36. After dividing by 4, I have 9 points. Then I'll mark it on my hip line and add 1 inch allowance to it. Then I'll take the same measurement I marked on my hip with the allowance and mark it up my waist line, and I'll also mark the same on my couch line. So on the 3 lines I have there on my fabric, I mark the quarter of my hip measurement plus 1 inch allowance. So I just rule it vertically, exactly the way you're seeing now. So the next thing I'm going to be doing now is to divide the waist measurement by 4, and my waist is 28. 28 divided by 4, I have 7. So 7 plus 1 inch for sewing allowance. You can see I included the 1 inch for sewing allowance. Then from there I'll mark it straight on my hip, and from there I will trace down to my hip line, exactly the way you're seeing. So I'll mark out the couch measurement, and I used the upper towel measurement. I divided it by 2, and I will add 1 inch allowance to it, and I marked it on it there. After I'm done marking it, is to connect it to the hip line with a curve, and I just came up from that joint up like 1 inch to curve it down. If you have a curve ruler, you just curve it straight away without going through this process. So from my hip line, I will go down 10 inches downward, and I'll mark it, and from there I'll mark out the lap measurement, the towel measurement. Yes, this is just my method. I use this most times I sew a palazzo kind of trouser. So I measure the lap, the down part's lap, then I will divide it by 2 and add extra 1 inch allowance for sewing. Remember, we've been adding 1 inch allowance for sewing. Then from there I'll go down 5 inches, because from there to my knee line is just 5 inches. So I'll go down 5 inches and measure the same thing I have on that part I just marked now. The same thing I'll place on my new measurement and mark it out. Before I proceed to the down part, I'll connect these lines I have already. I'll connect it together. Then I'll proceed by marking out the down part. So what I'll just do is to measure what I have on this new line, on the same towel line, exactly the way you are seeing me now. After measuring what I have, I will remove 1 inch from it and then mark it for the down part. To get my trouser well shaping, I'll go back to the hip line as you see, then I'll just trace it down with about 0.75, and on the knee I'll just come in 1 inch. Then I'll take it from that 1 inch and take it down to the below part of the pants. So I hope you understand what I did. I just came down 0.5 then, but when I got to the knee line I came in 1 inch and I took it down straight from there. Since I'll be joining this waist part to the upper body of my dress, I'm going to go up 0.5 from that waistline. I'll mark it 0.5 so that I will use that to join to the upper part. If I join like that, this will reduce my couch measurement and may cause it to be tight. So I'll proceed by cutting out what I drafted already. To get your desired palazzo, both in the length, the width, like the wideness, try to get your accurate measurement first. Measure well and make sure you don't measure it tight. Measure it to your taste, how wide you want it to be. So we'll proceed now by placing the front parts on another fabric that I'll be using to cut the back part. On the waistline, I will go up 1 inch. By the side, I will go out 1.5. Then the distance, I'll connect it to the upper part I mark already. Then the distance between my waistline and my hip line, I'm going to divide it by 2. On that point, I'll mark out 2 inches. You can see from up I have 1.5, from half I have 2 inches. Then on the couch line, I'll mark 3 inches. Then I'll go up again and connect that 1 inch I went out with. I'll connect it to the front part of the trouser slantly like that. Then the next thing is to connect this line I marked already to form my couch for the back parts. There's no big deal there. If you have a cuff ruler, just place it there to connect the lines together with cuff, and I just use my hand to connect it. Then I will go down again exactly as you are seeing now, 2.5 inches. Then on my in between the knee and the towel, I'll go out 2 inches. Then from there I'll be going out 2 inches to the down part. So I'm going to connect it just before I mark out the down part. Then for the down part, I'll just go out 2 inches. After I'm done marking out everything, I'll proceed now by cutting it out. Remember, the front part was folded in 2, so I have 2 pieces for the front part. Then the same thing I'm going to be doing also for the back part, 2 pieces for the back part also. If you watched this video to this point, thank you, and please do like the video so that it will reach many that might want to see this kind of video. And if it's your first time here, please ensure to subscribe. Let's grow this channel together. Thank you. So I'll proceed by cutting the upper parts of the dress, and this is me just folding up my fabric together, and after I'll mark out the starting point. And again, I don't know why this thing is always bending. Please ensure yours is straight. I will try to straighten up this. So this part now that I'm marking out is my starting point and where it will reach, and the next line is my chest line, which is 8 inches. I'll mark out my chest line now, 8 inches. The next thing is my bust point, which is 10 inches, and the next thing is my under bust, which is 12.5, and the down part you are seeing is my waistline, which is the half length line. So I'll divide my shoulder measurement by 2 plus 0.5, and I'm going to be slanting it down with 1 inch. This is just normal basic body pattern. Then from there I will take it down to my chest line, and from that edge I'm going to go up with 1 inch. I'll cuff it to get my armhole measurement. Then I'll divide that by 2, get the center and come in 0.5 and slant it up to meet up the up, exactly the way I'm doing it now. So the next thing we are going to be doing is to get our bust point, and my bust point is 4 inch. I'll mark it in all my lines. Someone asked me why did I use 4 inch when I'm cutting it straight on my fabric, and I still use the same 4 inch. Okay, so I'll be writing down the step by step method, so you can just pause the video and read to your understanding. Then on the half length, I'm going to go in 0.5, both in and the other side 0.5. Then come to my underbust 0.5. I'll mark it 0.5 again. I'll also mark it in and out. I will proceed by connecting the lines together. After I'm done doing that, on my bust points, I'll go down 0.5. Then from there I'll connect it to the lines I have downward, exactly the way you're seeing me doing it now. Then on the chest line, I will just go up 1 inch. Remember, the style we are marking is just straight at the illusion on the neck, so it's just straight. So I've marked the straight down, and if you want it to go down, you can just choose the same line without going up. So on that same point, I will mark 0.5 to the right side, and inwardly I'll mark 0.7 towards the center, 0.7, and towards the armhole area I mark 0.5 notes. So I'll proceed by marking the neck. So the width, I use 4 inches for the width, and for the depth I use 3 inches. So to the right, to the side I use 4 inches, and downward I use 3 inches. I'll proceed now by cutting out my fabric. So I'll place this exactly on another fabric to get the back part, so I will not need to start from afresh to mark all the necessity on another fabric. So I will just place this straight on the fabric. The only thing is that I'm going to be removing 1 inch allowance for the sewing, for the zipper, 1 inch for the zipper allowance at the center part, you can see now. So after that I will just go ahead and cut it out straight before I remove the darts and all that. So after I'm done cutting it out now, I'll mark out my chest line on the back part and my half length on the back part. Then my neck first, I'm marking out the same, it has the same depth, so I mark out 2. So you can see as I'm marking it out, so that when I'm taking the measurement of this part area, I will know exactly where to place my tape rule. I will not go so for the depth of the neck, that is the downward part, to take it down, I'll use 2 inches, but for the width I'm using 4 inches, the same as I use for the front part. So I'll just cut it out. Later when I separate the fabric, I'm going to be cutting the front part deeper. Then I'll open up the zipper allowance I have already. So after I'm done doing that, I'll just remove the front part, and I will extend the under bust measurement and my chest line that I marked out already while I place the front part on it. So remember, my fabric is folded in 2. So from there, I'm going to be marking out the darts from the back. And doing this now, I forgot to remove my zipper allowance 1 inch extra that I added. So anyway, when you're doing yours, ensure you mark out the 1 inch allowance. Is not included in the darts. So after you've marked out the 1 inch allowance, you can now mark out the bust point, which is the 4. Then begin to take your measurements, your darts. Then on the down part, I went in and out 0.5. Then I just connect it straight up, exactly the way you're seeing me doing it now. So this is me just using pin to secure it. I'm not going to be cutting it out straight or separating it. I'll connect it like this and also hold it exactly the same way while sewing it, which I'm still going to be showing us exactly how to sew it. But note, the 4 inch bust point is not included in your zipper. Ensure you remove the zipper allowance, which is the 1 inch, before you take the 4 inches for the darts. I forgot to remove this, but I'm going to be doing that since I didn't cut it out. So I will just clean it up and do it again. So I will proceed by marking out my bust measurement divided by 2 divided by 4 and plus 1.5 allowance, 1.5 inches allowance. The same thing I did for the under bust and for the half length. Then I'm going to be connecting everything together exactly the way you're seeing me doing it now. After I'm done doing that, I will just proceed and cut out what I have already. Then we'll proceed to finish up with the front parts. And this is the front part now. So I'll cut out the neck. Remember, I didn't cut the depths, the same thing with the back. So I'm going to be cutting out very well. Then for the illusion of the front, remember I just straight, so I've cut it out, and that part is the one I'm going to be using to cut out my organza. Then I'll proceed by marking out my bust points. So my bust measurement divided by 4, I mark it. Then I mark what I have for the darts, I put it back. Then I mark out the allowance, which is 1.5 allowance. The same thing for my under bust. I mark out my under bust divided by 4. I added back the dart allowance. Then I also add my sewing allowance, which is 1.5. Then on the waistline, I did the same thing, dividing my waist circumference by 4, placing back my dart measurement, which I'll be cutting out later, then putting my normal allowance, which is 1.5. Then I'll cut out this dart or the bust point or the breast pad, anyhow you know how it's called. So I'll cut it out. So when I'm done cutting it out, you can see what I have now. This is me placing what I have for the front parts, and this is the back parts, the front part and the sides. So proceed by cutting out the sleeve part. So this is my fabric. I folded my fabric in 4. I first folded it downward, then flip it to the side, making it into 4. And the length is, I'll be using 19 for the length. Then I added allowance, and that's why I have that allowance added on it. Then for the upper part, which is the side I will be entering the armhole, I just came down from the side 4 inches rather. Then I just slant it, curve it round exactly the way you are seeing me doing it now. So for the down part, my round sleeve is 10 divided by 2, I have 5. Then I add 1 inch allowance, I get 6. Then I'm going to trace it up to the cuff part I have, exactly the way I'm doing it now. So I'll proceed by cutting out the sleeve. We are partially done with drafting and cutting out of this beautiful dress. So in the next video, we shall be showing us how to sew it and how to cut the puff sleeve on top this main sleeve and how to pad the dress. Please like the video, subscribe to this channel and on the notification bell to get notified when I'll post the second part of this video. Thank you. Shalom.